Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. This video is about the dirty little secret of tariffs. I'm going to start off with the definition, the volatility index, the VIX. If you go to your online broker and type in VIX, it will show you the volatility index, which is a gauge of stock price fluctuations. When the VIX is under 20, stock prices are fairly stable. When the VIX rises above 20, stock prices are volatile. So recently, today, for example, the VIX was over 20. Stock prices are a little bit volatile. Today's April 24th. The VIX was at 26 today. A couple of weeks ago, the VIX skyrocketed to 57, quite high on April 8th. So who is actually benefiting from a VIX being over 20? This is kind of the dirty little secret of these tariffs and these tariff announcements and all the changes. Speculators are benefiting. And if the speculator has inside knowledge, they can really benefit. So in a calm stock market with the VIX under 20, speculators are generally not happy with that. They prefer changing stock market prices. So if you ask any speculator if they prefer a VIX, the volatility index, to be over 20, they're all going to say yes. We would prefer volatile prices because we can place bets on the direction of prices in the market. And that's what speculators do. Speculators, as compared to investors who tend to identify a good asset and they invest in it for the long term. So investing and speculating, not the same. So tariff changes recently have been causing the VIX to be over 20. The way the tariff announcements have been, they keep changing. They will say one thing one day and they will turn around and reverse it the next day. A recent example was Chinese tariffs will be 145%. A few days later, no, they're not going to be that high. And then just today they said, well, on some things, yes, they will be 145% tariffs. So these changes in tariff announcements, this is a huge opportunity for speculators. The VIX is high. That's great because stock prices are fluctuating and a speculator will prefer to place a bet, usually using options on the direction of assets. So, so the dirty little secret of these tariffs and these tariff announcements is it's benefiting speculators. I covered the actual, the good things about tariffs in this video, Tariff Tactics Maddening, from a couple days ago. So in that video, I lay out the positive outcome that the tariffs can actually bring forth, okay? There are some positive benefits to changes in tariff policy, and mainly it's to protect U.S. Domestic companies. That's kind of the benefit, and I lay that out in how these tactics are used to make that happen in that video, Tariff Tactics Maddening, from a couple videos from a couple days ago. I'd recommend you watch that if you have time. So the goal with tariffs, and especially the changes, the announcements and the changing announcements, is to keep predatory trading, so-called partners, back on their heels so that they cannot make plans. Because the way it works is this: the U.S. will announce a new tariff. A predatory trading partner, like China, will then make their own announcement, usually in retaliation. The U.S. will then change their tariff policy and announce it, a new announcement. China will have to then adjust their own. And so it goes back and forth. So at some point, the exhausted predatory trading partner, the idea is they'll become more cooperative, may become more cooperative. That's the hope. I laid out this tactic in this video, Tariff Tactics Maddening. So the goal of these changing announcements, it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to have new tariffs and then leave it as is. It's something totally different to say, on one day, this is what the tariffs are going to be. A couple days later, we're going to change that. And then a couple days later, change it again. So that's a tactic that's being used. And the idea is to prevent predatory trading partners from being to establish stable countermeasures to exhaust them so that they finally sue for peace and say, okay, we have manufacturing output. We need to be able to plan for it. We need some stability in how the U.S. is going to run its tariffs. Can we please sit down and negotiate this? That's the objective. I sort of explained that in that video. So the idea is the U.S. is keeping predatory trading partners, keeping them guessing, mainly, China right now, because we learned during COVID that, especially with pharmaceuticals and stuff, during COVID, that China has way too much leverage over the U.S. And so it's a reasonable goal for leadership of this country to protect domestic companies and to prevent the U.S. from becoming too dependent on a predatory trading partner. So, and just to well, let me continue here. So side effects of the changes in the tariffs. It's one thing to have a positive outcome, a goal to have a positive outcome, changing tariff policy so that we cannot be taken advantage of by predatory trading partners. But there are side effects, okay? It creates uncertainty for U.S. companies too. So for example, if you're a company in the U.S. and you import things from foreign countries and the tariff policies are changing and then the foreign country is changing theirs in response, it's pretty hard to plan for your U.S.-based company. What should your prices be? What quantity should we order from the offshore country? So it creates uncertainty for U.S. companies, and it's also creating lower stock prices and volatile stock prices. Speculators like that, but investors do not like that. Investors like the idea of the stock market goes up 9 to 10% over the long term every year. Speculators want prices changing all over the place. So the VIX did hit 57 a couple of weeks ago. Not good for investors. Speculators love it though. So one of the issues with speculators is if they are in the know, if they have advanced knowledge of tariff announcements, they could be cheating. And that's the only way the speculators can win in the long term. Because mathematically, you can prove, you can demonstrate that over the long term, the law of large numbers, if you're a speculator and you're not cheating, you're not using advanced knowledge, you will win half the time and you will lose half the time and you'll end up not making anything over the long term. So the only way to win at speculation is to cheat. And personally, I'm a little bit suspicious about who might be in the know. I won't go into that, but it just seems like if you're a speculator, the dirty little secret of these tariff announcements is you're a pretty happy camper right now, while the rest of the country who invests in assets is not very happy. Okay, so a couple other things I couldn't fit on the board. Okay, so right now, changes in tariff policies, we are only in Act 1. Everybody's kind of fed up with them already. We're just getting started. This is a process that started only a few weeks back, and we're just in the early stages. So set your expectation that tariff changes are going to continue. The only thing consistent is that tariffs will be changing. And I would just set your expectations that until new tariff policies have been agreed upon between all the trading partners, the tariff changes, the U.S. leadership is going to use this technique I outlined in that video to keep trading partners back on their heels, to make them come to the table and be reasonable about allowing U.S. products into their country. So tariffs have been used by leaders in the U.S. since this country got started. A recent example, President Biden imposed, increased tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. President Biden, back in May of 2024, he raised tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles from 25%. He raised them 400%. He raised them to 100% tariffs, from 25% to 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. And here's why. The old John D. Rockefeller technique is this. We create a product, we sell it in a market below our costs, at or below our costs, and competitors in that market stop making money and they go out of business. We then take their customers and raise our prices. So that's a predatory trading, it's called dumping. Predatory tactic that China would like to use with their electric vehicles. So President Biden put a stop to that and said, no, it's not happening. He raised tariffs to 100% on Chinese electric vehicles in May of 2024. And throughout U.S. history, many U.S. leaders have done this, have sought to protect U.S. companies. Because if very low-cost Chinese electric vehicles showed up in a market, it would put our car companies out of business, possibly. It would definitely hurt them seriously. But in general, tariffs are a mixed bag. They do protect U.S. companies, but they create a drop in stock prices, volatile stock prices, and they create uncertainty for U.S. companies. So the takeaway is, if you're going to spend money on assets, hoping to make money on them, over the long term, unless you cheat, you're not going to win at speculation. You can win if you invest. The stock market over the long term rises 9 to 10%. A year on average. And so investing means you would identify a market fund like an S&P 500 index fund, the NASDAQ 100, which is called the QQQ, the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. You would invest, wait until all these tariff announcements are behind us, and then you should be able to have a low price entry point into the market. And you can buy the market and you can hold for the long term. That's investing. Speculators, you can prove mathematically that unless they cheat, they cannot win. So if you have any questions about this, please post in the comments. I'll try to help you. And just to let you know, I've used speculation tactics in the past. And so I'm pretty familiar with them. So I've got personal experience on using speculation tactics, using options. And so if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I really want to thank everyone for watching, and have a great day.